I gotta go to school for how long? You're wasting so much time in school that, and I've said this before, you are way better off learning how to build your own home and actually building your own home from 18 to 22 while your friends are going to school.
Welcome back to the Collapse Life podcast. I'm your host, Zahra Sethna. Ever since Donald Trump won the election, a not insignificant number of mostly young women have been beside themselves. They've been calling for other women to divorce their husbands, leave their boyfriends, and withhold intimacy. The implication is that men are responsible for voting Trump in, even though 44% of women aged 18 to 44 supported him, according to the Associated Press. Here today to talk about the growing political divide between young men and women is author, podcaster, and founder of Asshole Consulting, Aaron Clarey.
Hello.
Welcome to the podcast, Aaron. Nice to see
Hi.
you.
Good to have me on.
Yeah, it's great. I couldn't think of someone better to have this conversation with. So just for folks who aren't familiar with you, um, you can maybe talk a little bit about your background, but one of the things that you do a lot of is guide young men and help them kind of navigate the complexities of social and economic life today. And I've heard you describe yourself as kind of a young man's Gen X older brother. So from that perspective, maybe start by talking a little bit about what is the state of affairs for younger men these days.
Well, my background that got me here is kind of, I am an economist, or was an economist anyway, and then in my relation to men and how it's germane to the elections is, I've largely helped out men critically assess the economics of courtship, marriage, dating, etc. in the United States, and the numbers are by no amount small. Men expend a significant amount of resources on the pursuit of women, and so that's how kind of I came to my little corner here of the internet. And then, as it pertains to this election and the current situation between men and women, you kind of saw that bear out in this election, and even before that, where I'm sure maybe a lot of your audience saw that chart where men were going more conservative and women were going more left leaning or liberal.
Yeah.
And I think that is reflective of the apolitical deterioration between men and women and the sexes, where both men and women are no longer really investing in each other, and they certainly aren't the number one priority in each other's lives as it would have been traditionally under family and spouse and children. We're kind of going to our respective corners. And so the election kind of bore that out with the statistics and the polls, where both men and women voted for the political party that best represented their own interests on their own as single people. So women tend to vote left, more government aid, government money, perhaps a little bit more security with social programs. And men, I don't even know if men really looked at the budget and said, "Oh yeah, lower taxes and conservatism." I don't even think it was that. It was just like we're sick of being yelled at and being blamed for everything. I think it was more a reactive vote on the part of men. And so here we are, where there certainly was a divide along sexual lines. And then, as you pointed out, now all of a sudden, a certain group of people, I won't say who, lost their communal bleep. And now we get to see it on full display on the internet and 4K YouTube videos.
Yeah. Do you think that that is a genuine reaction amongst those women, or do you think that it's a little bit of play acting because they live in a social media world and they just want attention and likes and retweets and stuff like that? What do
But
you think is
both,
actually happening there?
yeah, no, that's a good question. I would say for some it actually is real, because they have nothing else. Some
Mhm.
people, the gal who was screaming when Trump got elected the first time, I think a lot of women are. Man, I have a buddy whose clients reached out to him like, we got to move because Trump got, like, no joke. They're actually thinking about moving, and his profession is in the realm that he'd be one of the people to talk to about that. So I think there's some sincere people losing their minds or having this
Right.
kind of, I think the reaction is real. But yes, absolutely, in the world of TikTok, I think a lot of the girls that are like, I'm cutting my hair, a lot of that is just clickbait and shock marketing. But I think there's some authenticity in marketing on both sides.
Yeah, on both sides. I was going to say the same, that I think, that men are not immune to the sort of social media moment either, and
Mhm.
there's a lot of people who are taking it on and saying things or acting in ways because for the same reason you get the likes, you get the endocrine, I mean the rush, the emotional rush that you get from being heard. And so it's definitely on both sides. I think I, you know, as you said, I think many young men are just kind of sick of being talked down to. And it just so happened that the person that they voted for was a man and not a woman. And so it makes it look, or it plays nicely into a narrative that men are sexist. They can't vote
Oh,
for.
yeah, no, with Trump certainly, like, Vivek was my guy, but Trump is, oh gosh, he's the punching bag of the left at any Republican president nomination, but he has the history and certain, crass things he said in the past and locker room talk. Yes, he is definitely the voodoo doll, or he's certainly paints that narrative and tone that, oh yeah, it is sexist, misogynist men, and it's a man versus woman thing. I think a different candidate, especially if it was a woman, if a woman had to be nominated for the Republican Party, that probably would have changed things significantly. But the fact it's Donald Trump, and there's been this sex war building up in social circles, yeah, it definitely, now we got an explosive situation and has made for some very entertaining YouTube videos.
Yes, for sure, for sure. I was going to say that this sort of overreaction is not necessarily new. When Roe v. Wade was overturned a couple years ago, there was a similar outpouring of um, excessively emotional reaction.
Mhm.
Do you think it's the same? Do you think it's different? Do you recognize what you're seeing?
I'd say it's the same. And I'd say it's the same actors. Not that there's an individual list of the usual suspects, but it's the same, I would say, highly politically active activist, marginally or outright unemployed professional victims. If you go back, I mean, if we were to have reasoned discussion, political debate about abortion back when it was Roe versus Wade was rescinded, we would have said, look, it went back to the states. There'd be an argument about what didn't even happen under Trump's administration. It was Supreme Court due to some nominees of his, but it went back to the states. They say, well, wait a minute, there's some benefit to that for women to ensconce and ensure abortion as a right, because if it was a national level and you get a Republican president who has to be particularly Christian, say, nope, it's banned. You get a Democrat, nope, it's universal. The state rights actually allows, I think, a more long-term guarantee of that right. But that discussion is never had.
Right.
And that leads me to believe that these are your professional victims, ideologues who have no sanity or ability to discuss things rationally. It's always victim, always were oppressed. The pink genitalia hats. It's always theater. It's always we're the oppressed. And at the end of the day, it's always we need more money. And kind of like
Yeah.
your first question, how much of it is fake? How much of it is real? Yes. Are there particularly young women or politically motivated women that who have nothing but their politics? Like, are they absolutely apoplectic? Yeah, I'm sure there are some women, but I also think there's a fair amount of women who, yeah, they're probably left. They probably are pro-abortion, uh, but they're doing your standard "woe is me" victim narrative, orange man bad, and we need more money now than. I mean, I even had a request not too long ago where the guy asked, he says, do you think that Trump getting elected has made some feminists happy because they could continue on their victim narrative? And I say, yeah, actually, there's some who do kind of view that as job security. So
Interesting.
I say it's the same people now who are always going to be with us complaining, and they're always perennially oppressed. And this is just another opportunity for them to do so.
Yeah. I think though that there is a next layer to that. As you said, I think there are a lot of people who authentically are feeling this way. And part of it is because those opportunists have pushed a narrative and
Mm.
those people are reacting to it. And there's a lot of misunderstanding and quite frankly, misinformation. And I want to refer to one case that I heard of in Florida. There was a woman who was used in campaign ads and I think has been used to do congressional testimony and things like that. She was in an advanced stage of pregnancy, found out that her fetus was not viable, and they recommended that she have an abortion because neither the baby would probably not survive, and it could
Mm,
put her health at risk. And she was told in the hospital that they couldn't do it. And so she's become this sort of case study for Florida's law, when in actuality, Florida's law would have allowed her to have that abortion, but the doctors in the hospital or the hospital administrators misread the law and
okay.
didn't allow it. So she had to carry to term. The baby lived for 90 minutes. It was very traumatic. Totally understand. We can empathize. But she says this law took everything away from me. But actually, it was the hospital administrators and the doctors who didn't apply the law correctly. So I'm just using that as an example of how there's this herd mentality and this, you know, this misinformation really that is creating um, more of a turf war than we even need if we would just settle down and have, like you say, a rational conversation around these things.
Yeah, no, and if you go back, look, this starts at about kindergarten, where you have a narrative being taught to kids, starting with teachers. You can't ignore the effect of parents. Mothers tend to be left leaning. And we're now, my generation is now mothers, and a lot of people don't have, say, Christianity or Islam or Judaism as a traditional religion, but a lot of women have feminism as a religion. And the environment that these young girls are brought up in, and now are young ladies themselves, whether it's Zoomers or millennial girls, I think they're true believers, because what else were they told?
Yeah.
And when you get into misrepresentation, like you were saying, that's a particularly macabre example you provide, which is everything was taken away from me. So it's like, okay, so your politics is more important than the kid, or the kid you would theoretically care about, to make sure it didn't come to term, because you want to charitably um, end its life before it was miserable, not to mention for your own safety. No, you have to capital. It's like David Hogg, where, if you don't remember him, he's the kid who was very anti-gun because there was a shooting at his
Mhm.
school. Man, he let no opportunity go to waste. Like, you're capitalizing on some horrific stuff, some bad things, because you value your politics more than the dead bodies at a school, or a tragic issue of a mistake with an abortion. And it shows you in that particular case how some women can be totally conditioned to put politics, whatever variant might be, in this case, feminism or leftism, ahead of everything else, including their unborn children. And
Mm.
so, I do believe there is some authenticity, because really ask we've been telling young women for at least 2 generations now that the most important thing in their life is their politics tied with their career and job.
Right.
There is no other people, there is no husband, there is no kids. Oh, you may want those, but the number one thing is all insular. It's you, your career, your profession, and your politics. Uh, if you believe that, and the number one thing in your life is rejected by an election, Democratic, people vote, it's pretty clear, Trump won.
Mhm.
If you don't have anything else of more importance than that, oh, yeah. Yeah, I think they would be very angry and enraged. I think
Yeah.
some girl, like, there was one guy, I can't help but believe her. I mean, Lord only knows, but she's like, I'm worried about my friends' lives. They're a threat. Like, Trump wasn't, I don't recall where Trump was gonna say, "Yeah, I'm gonna round you up all, we're gonna shoot you." I don't believe
Right.
there was a concentration camp platform issue he had. So
Yeah.
you really could kind of see it. How much of it is fake? I don't know. If she's cute, she's like, "Hey guys, subscribe below." Okay, that's probably fake. But I do believe a lot of what you see on the internet is authentic, and not
Mm.
merely for clickbait.
Yeah. And I think that the media really plays a huge role in that. Um,
Mhm.
and the way they frame it, the words that they use, the language around it. So I actually wanted to play you a clip and get your reaction to this, because they in this clip they're using language around radicalization. And if you hear that, it's almost always associated with young men being radicalized. And
Mhm.
having heard what you just said, I don't understand why we couldn't use that same term to say that these young women that we've been talking about have also been radicalized, but that word would never apply, right? They would use language for the women about their bodily rights, their personal sovereignty. It's all in a positive tone. Whereas if men are standing up for certain things, it's just because they're being radicalized. So this is a clip of a journalist, Anand Giridharadas. He was talking on a panel on MSNBC.
What they have done in their online media ecosystem is build a radicalization engine, literally the way militant groups do around the world, that takes people from relatively low-level annoyances with the world. Why are eggs so expensive? Why is my kid learning this new thing in American history in school that I didn't learn? And then moves them through YouTube videos, through podcasts, moves them from that annoyance all the way, slowly, 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 to a full-blown fascist politics. It's an elaborate multi-billion-dollar infrastructure, and there is nothing like it on the pro-democracy side. We don't have when a man is just lost and lonely and not yet radicalized, we don't have the equivalent of Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson to move that man in a feminist direction. By the way, we should educate men that it's actually really great to live with a strong woman who makes money. It's actually easier. Life is easier.
What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, many thoughts. First, the guy's a clown. I looked into this guy before. He is not a real man. He's had a tremendously privileged life. I'm not listening to a 52-year-old man with a Johnny Bravo gray fro.
Stand back, everybody. Bravo man is here.
I'm just not listening to him. And you could tell I don't believe he's being insincere, but you can tell, like, we got to move men to a feminist orientation. And, the pro-democracy side, he doesn't realize this is the pro-democracy side. Sometimes you lose elections. Leftists are not necessarily pro-democracy and rightists are anti-democracy. But it's the mainstream media. Like, I mean, right now, I've talked about this before on my channel. We're the media now, right? This is a real conversation that's empirical. We don't have a bias. He's talking about multi-billion-dollar infrastructure with Joe Rogan and all that. Like, well, what is the mainstream media? Was that CNN or MSNBC?
That was
I mean, they
MSNBC.
legitimately have they have billions of dollars worth of equipment. I mean, you guys are the establishment, but they failed. But it's finally coming to light that the mainstream media is basically an arm of the Democrat Party. They're their propaganda arm. Journalists are also, for selection bias, they lean left, and I think they're in their echo chamber for so long that they don't realize it, but they're tipping their hand and exposing their bias. So having researched economics for so long, and here's the data, and then I watch what the mainstream says. I'm like, you guys are so far. I haven't trusted the mainstream media since I was a late teenager. But what I think about, this is what your normies get. Yeah, this is what your girls are going to get. Probably even more extreme view with an environment such as college or university.
Yeah.
But it for those with independent thought, people who don't have a horse in one race or the other, you look at that and I think it's completely dismissible. Yes, there is what it exposes is that there is a default setting. Men need to be good little women. Men need to be feminists. Democrats are always right. The left is always right. And Republicans bad. You kind of see that. But I think the authenticity and the veracity of the mainstream media is pretty much gone. People are increasingly seeing it. Come on, look at the guy. I'm not trusting that guy. I'm not. Like, grow up, get a haircut, work a real job, set down mom and dad's money. I don't care about these clowns anymore. I think increasingly so the mainstream people are tuning in less.
Yeah.
Women, I think, are tuning in a little bit less than the mainstream people, but men, because of their primary interest in women and getting laid and having sex and forming relationships with women, they've long abandoned what The View or Mr. Squeaky Voice says. Because it doesn't work. Men, I guess, are a little bit more practical, a little bit more urgent. they're finding out that all the information that they receive, not just about the sexes and all that, but careers, education, this and that, doesn't work. And so they've searched alternative sources of information, wisdom, and all that. Thus, a Joe Rogan or Jordan Peterson or
Right.
my company and the consulting that I do. And so that's why I think men have, especially this past election, but past definitely 10 years, haven't moved to a political right, but they're not believing the left's propaganda and BS and lie because it's not practical. It doesn't work. It doesn't bear out in the real world.
Right.
Will women come along? Maybe, maybe. Depends on how thorough and widespread that indoctrination is. It's ultimately up to women whether they want to listen to gray hair Johnny Bravo, or if they want to like actually get married. But that's a them choice. I think women are going to inevitably have to square that. But yes, they're trying to continue like, oh, women are good and feminism is good and the right is bad. But I think that message is failing on both sexes, but especially men.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you mentioned it earlier that there's, you mentioned a chart, but there is research that's showing that, especially among Gen Z, for example,
Mm,
men are sort of trending more conservative, although that's only because we have a binary that says that if they are not left and liberal, then they ergo must be conservative. But they're just sort of trending away from that and actually increasingly becoming a little bit more indifferent to the whole thing. While in Gen Z, the women have been becoming way more progressive and way more politically involved and engaged. So they're donating, they're volunteering, they're registering getting out the vote and voting themselves. And so more and more between that group of people, there's this growing chasm. And we're now live in this such a polarized place. They can't even have a conversation with each other.
mm.
Um, what are you hearing? Because you have a large audience of, especially a lot of young men. What kinds of things are you hearing from them, and where do you think things need to go if we want to actually bridge that divide?
Well, uh, what I'm seeing on my end is men are indifferent, apathetic, and I wouldn't say retreating, but they don't have an interest. To cut to the chase, women are not physically attractive as they once were. Men are also overweight, but women have gained weight. They're not physically attractive. That's the primary motivator men would have in women. Just, oh my God, you only want one thing. Generally, yes, that was the one thing men wanted. But that's kind of off the table. Then you throw in personality, which I think, if I'm speaking bluntly, leftists and feminists have, I wouldn't say fully indoctrinated, but condition women to not be subservient, nice, kind, sweet. I mean, the idea like you would cook for a man is now considered blasphemous and an insult and sexist. And it's like, no, it's just maybe being nice for a guy. Then there's actual behaviors, both in person and then also online dating, where in person, it's always been the case. The majority of the time, girls are going to reject men because they're more picky than men, and that's fine. There's biological survival reasons for that, but online data, as it's come out, has shown women really do not have that much interest in men, and the phenomena of social media has made it that women have become even more picky. Well, inevitably, men got to choose between food, clothing, and shelter and chasing girls. And unless you're exceptionally good looking and you put a lot of time and effort into it, guys got to eat. Guys got to go to school, pay off debts. And in becoming so unattainable or disinterested in men, it takes, God, I would have to say, even since my day, I think it probably takes two, maybe even three times as much effort to get the same amount of dates I used to back when I was a young man.
Hmm.
I didn't have 2 to 3 times the amount of money or free time back when I was 25. I had to work. So
Right.
it's become an impossible situation. And so
Right.
men will try some online dating. They'll maybe ask a girl out. The vast majority of the time they'll be rejected. The vast majority of the dating experience will have been bad. And then you see the media, whether authentic or not, if it's a TikTok girl like I can't stand that, which may be a little bit fake, or girls, whatever. Guys like forget I don't have time. It's just not worth it.
Right.
So there's that. What we would need to bridge the gap, we're going to have to go back to old school traditionalism, and women are going to have to consider and deliver what men want. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the modern day disinterest we see with women and men right now is authentic. I don't think women like men all that much to begin with anyway. I think you're seeing them act on it because we have white collar work. Women can support themselves. There's a generous welfare state. So I don't think women are that interested in men unless you're exceptionally attractive one. So we happen to be at this impasse. But if we are to
Mhm.
get together and then have men be interested in women, women be interested in men, both on an individual and society nationwide basis, to where we'd start saying, okay, what policies are in the best interest of all of us? We have to also have interest in each other. And
Right.
I do not see that happening. I don't see women within our lifetimes and the generations that exist now. I don't think they're going to say, "Oh yeah, let me give up my master's in accounting and go put on the cute dress with the heels and start making cookie." I don't think uh, we're there. I don't
Mhm.
think the Generation Alpha or Z women are being conditioned to do that, let alone do they actually want to do it. So we will
Yeah.
be at this continued impasse. And I think voting patterns between men and women will more or less reflect it. Men will become more insular, voting for their own money, their own independence, and leave us alone. We'll be voting, no, I want some government safety and assurances and free education, all these other kind of things. So I think it will continue, but it will be a long time before we see men and women coming back together again to kind of consider each other's communal interests.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty frightening for the future of society because if that is the case in this younger generation and then who knows what the generation coming up behind will think of the world, that's going to lead us to pretty much population collapse or at
Mhm.
least a huge demographic shift. Um and maybe that's part of the plan, but what's the ramification going to be? If
Oh, it's hard. I got the hang on. Yeah, I got this thing called a book, A World Without Men, and an analysis of an all-female economy. I know exactly what it's going to be. It's going to be pretty horrible. And there's nothing wrong, just so everyone knows, there's nothing wrong with a population going down, even a population collapse. It's income per capita, wealth per capita. That's all that matters. It's irrational to worry about a shrinking population. Now, if you have a welfare state that enslaves your younger generation to pay for the older generation, you have tons of debt. Yes, then it's a problem, but that's a problem for old people and the government to worry about. But generally speaking, there's nothing wrong with a population collapse. But I would say for the here and now, whether the population collapses or not in the future, what you have to worry about is production per capita. That's what the whole point of this book is, where I look at, well, who's producing what between the sexes? What do men produce? What do women produce? Again, it's a short show, so I'll be really short. Generally, women don't produce all that much that's really important. Yes, there are some female oil rig workers. Yes, there are female engineers in STEMs. But the vast majority of the critical things that make this or any economy go is done by men. Your carpenters, your electricians, your linemen, your engineers, your sewage people, your programmers, and all that. And it's an unfortunate reality, but what primarily motivated men was women. Now that that's off the table, you start to see lower labor force participation rates, men not asking out women as much, a retreat from both men and women in respective quarters, less kids and all that, because men are really now just working to keep themselves alive, not a family
Right.
of four alive. And so that is having economic effects now. Housing is more expensive, cars and maintenance repair is more expensive. There are wait lines for different sought after tradesmen and all that, largely because men have been demotivated from the
Mhm.
opposite side, whether it's political or sexual, from participating in society. Because literally, for decades, society and women have told them they're not needed. And they're like, okay. So, yeah, I've never heard men say that to demoralize women. But yeah, there is right now there are economic effects, serious ones, mainly
Right.
inflationary, that are because of that, because of the disagreement the sexes are having with each other right now.
I think it's really interesting to take it from an economic standpoint. But so there would be some women who would be listening to this conversation and saying, yes, there were times when men told women that they were not needed or where they were kept out of the workforce just a few generations ago. Um, they were told to stay home and put on the high heels and makeup and bake the
Mhm.
cookies for their man until he came home. And so we don't necessarily want to go back to another situation of imbalance. Obviously, we're in another situation of imbalance now, but it's just tipped the other way. How can
Mm.
we kind of maybe make a suggestion of something that would bring us to a little bit more equilibrium, so that women don't have to kind of feel as though they're going back to their great grandmother's generation, and men don't have to feel like they're going back to some sort of caveman type persona. I don't know what the answer is, but I feel like there's got to be some sort of modern equivalent of men and women working together and having families and being successful without
I
women just usurping what men had, which I think is
Right. No,
completely wrong.
I think we kind of maybe had it in the 70s, in the 80s. I was a kid back then, but it was not frowned upon that women could work. It wasn't like
Yeah.
men are, oh, you can't come out of that. That's pretty old school. But I think we could have it. I mean, if you just allow for freedom. Look, yeah, do you wanna go become an accountant? Look, and I get into arguments with people on my side. A lot of people on my side are saying women shouldn't go to college. They shouldn't go into STEM or engineering. Those jobs should be left to guys and da da da. And I'm like, well, wait, what are girls supposed to do from 18 to about 23 or 24 by the time you guys are old enough and responsible enough and reliable? And there's a 27-year-old man that they get married and you start family. Not, especially with the economy now, not every 18-year-old girl is going to be shipped off, get married, and have kids. On top of it, unless you had a lot of kids, kids are not going to consume your entire adult life. At the end of the day, your kids are going to be off to school doing something. What's she
Right.
supposed to do? Just sit there and clean the dishes for her? And so, no, they're absolutely both men and women, especially as individuals. If you want to go pursue a career in some, you absolutely should.
Mhm.
But if you wanted to, you say suggest, it's like, I don't know if you have kids, but good luck getting your kid, good luck getting anyone to do anything they ought to. If you could figure that out, you'll be a trillionaire, but I think it's not gonna be until the economy absolutely collapses
Mhm.
that we rediscover why men did that and they went out and earned the bacon, and why women stayed at home. The technology has evolved and created that, yes, women can work and have careers and all that, and they absolutely should. But if you wanted men and women to get together, we're gonna have to it's not even an issue of whether you would work. It's an issue of giving up the ideology of being anti-male. I don't wanna say hating
Yes.
men, but this idea that I don't need no and blah, 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 like you're insufferable. Forget men, women. You're just not a pleasant person to be around.
Yeah.
We are also going to, and this is where you could suggest all you want, I don't think it's gonna happen. You're gonna have to admit men have preferences and requirements before they start working again. I'm not getting up in the morning to go bust my ass off to feed an ungrateful wife and kids and bail some gal out of her student loan debt for her journalism degree. It's not going to happen. You're not going to get men, they can't find enough men to join the military. They're not going to pick up a rifle with half the
Mhm.
population telling them they're not needed and the cause of all their problem and they're the oppressors. And here's the other thing. I know it sounds cheap. I know it sounds shallow. Women got to get a lot better looking than they are right now and lose some weight before any guy actually has that genetic fire lit under him before, and I know this is going to hurt. You're actually gonna have to sleep with these guys occasionally and maybe go on a date. I get a total kick out of the dating apps where all the dating apps are failing. Do you know why? Zara, why are the dating apps failing?
Tell me.
There's no dates. You know, we got the burger joint, but they don't sell no burgers. And the guys go on the date. They don't get no. I mean, there's a very few dates that happen, but you're going to have to consider what men want and
Yeah.
deliver it to them, which puts women at a very interesting philosophical point. What if women don't want to be married to men? What if women don't find the majority of men attractive? I mean, it's a serious question. And now it's like, well, we can't force women to start liking men or lose weight or be nice. It's their choice. Maybe they don't have a genuine reciprocal interest in men. So while that is sorting itself out, though, without women in their lives, generally speaking, men are going to be a fraction of production as they were before.
Yeah.
And we're going to continue down this sclerotic, declining kind of GDP. So it's not that we have
Yeah.
to go back to old school roles, there's June Cleaver and Ward, but you're gonna have to, I don't know, treat guys nice and be physically attractive. And so, but that's gonna be a choice up to women.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting too that, as you say, there's no motivation for men to be as productive as they used to be, or more so.
Mm,
But at the same time, consumption patterns have completely changed in this new paradigm. So instead of, for example, in the June and Ward Cleaver time, there was one car for four
mm.
family members. Now everybody's living on their own. So everybody needs a car. So, one car per family, one microwave per human. I mean, everything that has suddenly multiplied. So on the demand side, um, that changes the economic equation completely. I'm not an economist, so I'll let you kind of comment on that, but it just is something that occurred to me as you were talking.
Oh yeah, no, there's by now most people 40 and under would be living under one home nuclear family, right? So you're right, you would need one house, one car, maybe more modernly two. You would need a TV, appliances in general be yes, and don't think corporations and retailers haven't noticed, but when you have a lot of single people, yeah, now you need 2 residences, maybe not houses, but 2 condos. Now you need 2 TVs, you need 2 cars and things like that. So yes, demand for these things on a per capita basis has definitely gone up. The question is, where are the men, and if women care to participate, who are making the microwaves? Who are making the cars. We really don't. We've outsourced that largely to foreign countries, especially
Mhm.
China. And so you have, it's not that demand for men to wire microwaves or make cars or whatever else has gone up for American men. We can outsource that extra demand. Because you're right. If there was an initial increase in demand due to sociological changes, that would drive up wages and men would be up. But we've outsourced that to countries that essentially have slave labor. So there is not even that secondary economic benefit that would come to domestic people, Americans, having an increase in jobs and more financially stable men.
Right.
Yeah, and in that way, you kind of took away men's agency. Where no guy likes to work, a lot for bad jobs, but at least at the end of the day, he has something. So now it's
Mhm.
like there's depression on wages, especially for fields that men were traditionally employed in, and yeah, you really have no reason to get up in the morning. But hey, we all got televisions, so we all got our own. We got our own. I don't know what people buy. They got their own barrel sauna, whatever people buy. I don't know what the folks do, but yeah, it's turned in from a familial economy and society to one of consumerism.
Yeah, I mean, so whenever these kinds of things happen and you ask questions, the question to ask is follow the money, right?
Mm.
So it almost starts to make sense that there's this overwhelming narrative that keeps men and women apart and keeps them pursuing separate paths and keeps corporations in business selling more and more stuff.
Oh yeah,
So
there's a
yeah, really,
tremendous incentive among many institutions, corporations, and employers. They get double the labor force, more or less, which depresses wages. Women have spending money. There's the rise of the she economy. Everyone's very well aware of that, and you market so there's more production there. Um, Colleges love women. They love
mhm,
women because you will sign on that dotted line to give them $125,000 in your youth for a fluffy bunnies degree. And then not cars are more the men's domain. Men get
mm,
hoodwinked on the cars. Women is more general consumption spending, but you got your luxury goods like handbags, which I never understood in my life, shoes and fashion and stuff like that. Yes,
mm,
corporations are very happy when we are separated and apart
yeah.
because they make a lot more money. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting take on this. And we were talking about, I think you mentioned that this makes for some really fun YouTube watching and social media browsing because there are some just insane things going on in this space. One of them that just came up over the past couple of weeks is this South Korean movement, which has now been picked up by American women, the 4 Bs.
Mm.
Um, have you seen that? Have you seen what's going on
Yeah,
there?
no, the 4B, that's been around for a while. I almost wanna say it's been
Mhm.
around for a decade. That was started in South Korea by a more, microscopic and obscure group of women. And then that's if you look up articles, that's kind of been a thing. And people have been kind of talking about here in the United States and the West, but definitely with Donald Trump, that has brought up women doing the 4B movement as well.
Which
So
is, do you remember what the 4 Bs were?
it is the Korean word no starts with B. So it's four no's. And I think it's no sex, no children, no marriage, and no kindness, maybe? I mean, we could look it up, but a complete divestment
Yeah.
from men. Don't give men what they want. And so that's what's happened there. Yeah.
Yeah. And as we've seen in South Korea, huge sort of population decline and birth rate and that sort of thing, which then leads into all the social and economic issues we were just talking about. So if that's the path we want to go, that's where we know we'll end up. The next kind of layer on top of 4B that's also come out in the past couple of weeks is the MATGA movement. Make Aqua
Oh,
Tofana great again. Have you seen that?
were there poisoning men?
Yeah,
Is that
let's play a video
all
and
right?
just watch that for a second.
Aqua Tofana. Am I right? Aqua Tofana. If you know, you know.
So for viewers who don't know, this is something that was developed apparently in Sicily in the 17th century. Aqua Tofana was a poison. It was named after a woman who invented it, Giulia Tofana. Apparently, she helped women escape their allegedly abusive husbands by helping them quietly poison them. And so now all of a sudden we have this little TikTok moment where women are telling each other that they should poison the men in their lives.
Yeah. I okay. I can't take her serious. Along with gray-haired Pompadour man, I can't take dump truck with glasses seriously. I just can't. She obviously doesn't have a man in life. To recommend poisoning a group of people because they voted a different way is obviously evil. I would also say it was on TikTok, right? So it's probably to get clickbait. And then I looked it up because I had to look up the movement. There has not been an increase in men going to the hospitals due to poisoning. So I think this is kind of more like the 4B movement or women cutting their hair. It's at best losers, people with nothing else in their lives, trying to get edgy on the internet. Probably at worst, some miserable people who just have no one else in their lives, nothing but their politics. Because Obama won, and I wasn't like, "Oh my God, we got to poison all the people that voted for Obama." I had something else to do that day. It wasn't making a video about poisoning people I disagree with, but there's a lot of people like that, and I
Yeah.
would implore, particularly women, as it pertains to this conversation, if that's where you're at, you don't have to like the fact Trump got elected or different things didn't go your way, but if this is how the best use of your time, you are wasting your time on this planet. There are some tremendously important, better things that'll make you a happier person you should be
Yeah.
pursuing in life. But I think that's what we're seeing with more of these zany, drastic 4B, no sex for men, cutting my hair kind of antics. You're seeing, frankly, mentally disabled or mentally disabled, mentally
Unstable.
deficient. Yeah, mentally unstable, mentally deficient women who have nothing else but their politics
Mhm.
and just frankly attention whoring. And I was like, good,
Yeah.
okay, you cut your hair, congratulations, here's your clicks. But I don't think any healthy people who I don't know might like the opposite sex are going to be paying much attention to that.
Yeah. And I think you and I can see through it and even kind of laugh at it, even though it's horrifying.
Hmm.
I do wonder about other people who live their lives so much more in that virtual world, whether they can actually see the insanity of it. But as you say, we haven't seen actually calls to the poison control center spiking because this is actually happening. So let's hope that it is just a laughable moment and we can move on. But
But
what
see,
strikes me, sorry, go
well,
ahead.
I was
You go
going to
ahead.
say you bring up an amazing point because when I was a kid, I actually thought Macho Man Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan hated each other. When you're a little 8-year-old boy, you don't know it's theater, all right? And then Jerry Springer, okay, the average 15 or 16-year-old should know that's fake. I could see
Yeah.
if you're 13, 14, like, oh my God, what's going on? it's gotten to where you don't know, are they faking it or not? And I would say girls on TikTok or, 4B or shaving your head, you don't have the studio, you don't have the context, you don't have the referee lecturing the guy while Macho Man takes a chair and beats Hulk Hogan up with. You don't see the absurdity of it. So I think you're right. A lot of people can't discern that that's
Yeah.
fake. They can't say, look, not all women are crazy. Like, have you seen any women with their head shaved off when you went out in public and got
Not yet.
gas? Not yet. Yes. I don't again, you got to go outside and look like, no, all women haven't lost their communal bleep like that.
Yeah.
This is really just a bunch of uh, skewed women on the internet. So I don't think it's as
Yeah.
bad as the internet would paint it.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think this is something that we all can do is help others break out of that little tunnel vision that they may be in, and actually help everybody just with their critical thinking. Just ask them,
Mm.
really, do you think that's real? Have you, as you just said, have you seen a lot of women shaving their heads? Because maybe it's not as big a thing as the media would make it seem.
Do you
Because
really want to
obviously,
poison your husband?
yeah, do you?
Would you know where to get poisoned? I don't know where to get poisoned. Where do you get poisoned?
This is what
Poison
these
store?
TikTok women are trying to help each other figure out. I mean, so one thing I wanted to mention, because I thought you might be interested and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, is we just interviewed a young man who's 19 years old who is taking an alternative route to what his peers might be thinking. So he's not going to college. He's not going into a dead end job. He's not going into the military.
Mm.
He's doing something which they're loosely calling the preparation. So his name is Maxim Benjamin Smith. His father is Matt Smith, and Matt works very closely with Doug Casey, who, as an economist, you probably know Doug Casey.
That sounds
Um,
familiar. I should know him. Yeah.
he's a senior gentleman now who's been around in the economics and finance space for a long time, kind of libertarian slash anarcho capitalism,
Oh, okay. Hang
um,
on.
very interesting character. And he, in his twilight years, was thinking, what could young men do that would be better alternatives to those three options: military, dead end job, or college? Because all of those things are wastes of time and they're not going to set you up in any kind of way. So he was thinking about that, and he came up with a list of different skills, different professions, occupations that a young man might be able to pursue. And Maxim, at 18 years old, became the beta tester of this idea. So for the past year, he's been doing things like learning how to scuba dive, learning how to play chess, learning to be an EMT. He's learning how to speak Spanish because he happens to live part of his time in Uruguay on a ranch. And so he wants to be able to speak to the ranch hands, but he's also learning how to ranch. And um, he writes about this on Substack. It's pretty fascinating, but it was so refreshing to talk to someone like that who has a completely alternative view on the world than the kinds of people that we were just talking about on social media, or the kinds of people that you might encounter who are just feeling so demoralized because the world feels very set against them. He's breaking out of that by actually just not following or not falling into any of that narrative. So I wanted to mention it to you because I thought you'd be interested, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on kind of how we can propagate things like that for young
Well,
men.
the main reason to give someone an incentive to do that, and there's other ways that are happening, not just with collapse life and prepping, but step back and kind of look at, okay, how do you go about getting a house? All right. Well, you got to go to school, you go to college, then you got to go get an interview, then you got to pay off your student loans, then you got to get promoted, so that by the time, if you're lucky, you're 35, you saved up enough for a down payment. Or you could just learn how to build a house at 16. You pick up a skill or a trade, you barter your trade. Like, let's say you learn how to wire houses, you learn a little bit of concrete pouring and building a house, all right, framing. Now you can go ahead and, okay, I'll wire up 5 houses if you roof mine, and you do the plumbing and I'll do the wire on that. And what you're starting to see is that with any kind of, I hate to say socialist economy, but like right now, 40%, 4 out of every $10 goes to the government, state, federal, local. All right. So you go
Right.
out, make 10, 4 got to go to the government, some of which you get back in the form of defense and roads, but I'm not going to go into that. That is
Mhm.
a tremendous inefficiency. That's a tremendous efficiency loss. Not to mention, you got to go to school. This is what young men are facing, women too, but young men are like, I got to go to school for how long? You're wasting so much time in school that, and I've said this before, you are way better off learning how to build your own home and actually building your own home from 18
Mhm.
to 22 while your friends are going to school. So if you could work up the money, get a skill or a trade while you're in high school, start cracking down. Okay, we pour the foundation. And it's not going to be the biggest house ever, but it'll be more than the average millennial has. It is more efficient for you to just directly labor and make your own stuff, especially some key things, specifically housing, because housing is your number one expense. Rather than going through the inefficient system where you're losing 4 out of every $10, not to mention literal years of your life in an education system, and then you have to go and work for a corporation, their financial incentive. No, 100% of your caloric effort and time expended on things like your friend and colleague is doing, that is way more economically efficient. So, okay, he's learning how to be a ranch hand. He can ranch, he can make his own food. He's learning
Mhm.
how to speak Spanish. All right, he now can go and work in different, like the number of countries he can operate in has dramatically and exponentially increased. And whereas you said chess and scuba diving, okay, those are fun things, and certainly more entertaining than working. But I think the proposition we're giving young people today, both men and women, is such a losing proposition and so
Mhm.
inefficient that there are now just being like the Amish. Now we'll make our own. We'll raise our own barn. Things like that are starting to happen now. More commonly, you see it becoming like van life. I'll get a trailer, which is kind of the same thing.
Mhm.
But yes, the situation is becoming so impossible to survive and through the traditional methods and institutions we used to, that you have a lot of people looking at an alternative lifestyle. I have a friend, Ryan Steva. He does a little YouTube channel on living off grid. He has
Mhm.
chickens. He builds his own things. He fixed his own house, all that other kind of stuff. So yeah, in times past, yeah, it would be more efficient. The division of labor is simply what it is. I'll go do my thing really well.
Right.
I'll get paid, and then I'll go pay other people to do their thing really well. That's gone, not at a 40% tax rate. And so now it's like, no, I'll just do it myself, not bother going to get my master's degree. And by the time I'm 24, I'll become a mechanic. I'll have a house that's operational and I'll have 100% equity in it. You'll be just getting out of your master's degree program
Mhm.
with $250,000 in debt. And then maybe when you're 50, you can buy a house. So I absolutely encourage that where you directly work for yourself and all the labor goes to benefit yourself.
Yeah. What a way to empower a group of people who are being demoralized by society.
Mhm.
And it's almost like we had to get into a near crisis situation in order to find that as a pathway out, which would be so much better
Yeah.
for all of us. I mean, for that young generation who shouldn't feel hopeless, but also for the rest of us. We have now suddenly fired up people who know how to do things and want to do things and have incentive to do things. So, yeah, I love
I
that.
It's very hopeful. I mean, because I see a lot of younger people like, "No, I'm not going to college. I'm gonna go into the trades. I'm gonna go
Yeah.
do my own," and it's good to see because there are kids that I consulted who, I don't know, they're 30 now. They're blowing me out of the water when I was 30. Oh, man, like, these kids are got $250,000 cash and a house paid off. What do you do? Like, "I don't know. I've not made it there yet, but good luck to you. Let me know what you figure out." So it's good to see there are some young people who are not making the mistakes we did and are capitalizing on kind of like entrepreneurial self labor.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. Well, Aaron, I so appreciate having this conversation. It's been a lot of fun. Remind everybody how they can find you and learn more about you.
You could find me on the internet on all the major platforms. YouTube is probably my primary channel, but if you needed to reach out to me, you can find me at my consulting company called assholeconsulting.com. But otherwise, you just search my name, you'll find me on Twitter and YouTube and Facebook. But that's kind of the flagship. If you have a question, you can reach me there.
Fantastic. Well, again, I so appreciate you coming on and having this chat with us. And hopefully we'll be able to do it again soon.
Thanks, sir. I appreciate it.
Well, we would love to hear your thoughts on this subject. There's so much to react to, and Collapse Life is all about exploring ideas from all angles. So please drop your comments down below. And also, while you're there, subscribe to this channel and join a growing community of curious minds. You can take the conversation a step further by subscribing to our Substack at collapselife.substack.com. And you can also check us out on Twitter at collapse_life. Thank you, Aaron Clarey, for being here. And also thank you, our viewers. Your support means the world to us. We will see you back here next week. But until then, just keep your chin up. It's only collapse. See you soon.